I love to start these conversations out with you both kind of just explaining a little bit about what your roles are with the project and what you guys are hoping to accomplish overall here.
Cool. I'll just start off. My name is Erics. I'm one of the co-founders of Shikigai. And then, do you want me to continue on, or Fridge? Fridge, how about you introduce yourself and I'll continue on.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm open the fridge. I mainly basically handle most of the partnerships and collaborations for Shikigai. Yeah, and I work very closely with the team. Yep.
Cool. And then, what we're trying to accomplish initially, we're really focused on two aspects, which is story and culture. Culture in terms of like how we build out like the culture of our brand and in the Web3 space. And then story is telling like the story of not only like the lore that we have put out, but also the story of individuals in our community and sharing that shared experiences and stories. So right now we're in the early stages of this basically, right? Like this is like the foundation. So we're building on the foundation and building a brand and IP.
Excellent, amazing. I appreciate that introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top with a really, it's a hard hitting question, I guess, to some people, but honestly, I think it's an honest question. What makes Shikigai stand out from other PFP projects?
Yeah, for sure. Um, to I would say, so for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Shikigai who are just joining in, um, we're really focused on three values, which is story, kinship, and growth, right? I already talked about story. Kinship is basically culture, right? And then growth is empowering back into the community. I think at this standpoint right now, what for us, what really stands out for us is like how we focus on empowerment within our Discord and through the many actions we have, and these are the intangibles that make us who we are in this space, right? In terms of a PFP project, um, what helps us stand out, like overall is going to be how we build the brand and how a lot of
I
these
was going to show you this.
nuances into hello. Sorry. So how a lot of these nuances like overlap with each other, and I guess there will be some alphas I'll be sharing like throughout. Right now, like all we've really shared about what we're doing is really focusing on just like the IP and the brand. And I think what makes a PFP stand out overall usually is the branding, and that's really what we're focused on right now.
Excellent. I know a big part of this is individuality and being able to express yourself. Kind of, you mentioned building culture rooted in empowerment and curiosity. Can you tell us a little bit about how maybe the art kind of plays into that, and maybe speak on Ichiro, Jiro, and Sabaru a little bit, and how that kind of plays into the PFP style?
Yeah, 100%. So for a quick refresher for everyone, we have three districts within our world: Ichiro, Jiro, and Saburo. Ichiro is district of human connection, tradition, simplistic living. Jiro is more focused on the tech and sciences, and Saburo for the creatives. And the way we saw this, especially designing like this PFP project, is that these represent individuals within the world of Shikigai. And what that means to us is that individuality aspect, So just in each district, right, there are distinct traits. If you're just looking at it purely from a PFP point of view, each district has their distinct traits that don't necessarily relate to the other districts. Um, in terms of like fashion style, etc., there will be some like overlap, etc. But the way we design is basically like three sub collections within one. And then on top of that, just like purely by numbers, like we have around like 300 to 500 traits. I don't have an exact number right now per district, right? So we really focused on like how we can individualize while being under the same ecosystem, right? Same world. Yeah. So the way we kind of see it also is that like these PFPs represent like kind of like your identity, like there will be um, a variety of different PFPs, and basically you kind of grow affinity to something that you see defines kind of who you are, or what you want to be, etc.
I love that, and I think one of the coolest things that I've experienced with your all's project so far, obviously in its infancy, is when I joined the Discord. It had this personality quiz, and anyone who's been on the internet for more than a few years is obviously taking a personality quiz to see what Pokemon you are, whatever you are. But I thought it was really cool. That reminded me of like a sorting hat, so to speak, on which district you would best fit into. So I love that concept, and I think it's missing right now. Is sure, does the artwork speak to you? Does it say something about you? But like who like your personality, does it come out in your profile picture? And I feel like you guys are definitely serving that. So I love that aspect. Can you kind of give us a rundown on when you guys are hoping to launch Shikigai, and when you guys are planning on minting?
Yeah, for sure. We're hoping to launch sometime in June, closer earlier than later in June. But we're just going to be monitoring the market and also continuing to grow our community in the meanwhile. But it's going to be sometime in June.
Excellent. And post mint, what kind of plans do you guys have for the community and the participants of the project after the minting process happens?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have like two answers for this. So one is kind of like a timeline of how things kind of play out, and then the second one is kind of more of like immediate, I guess. I don't want to say the word utilities, but immediate offerings that we would provide to the community. Simply by just owning our NFT. So the timeline kind of looks like this. Like after launching our collection, we're going to be scaling up our team, right? Right now, we have a team of 11 who are very capable at what we're doing right now, but ultimately, we're looking to build out the IP, right? But this is something that we've been like talking about more recently. We haven't really shared with a lot of people, so this is like some alpha for maybe for you as well. But we're actually planning to scale not just in the direction of IP, but also in tech and technology, and we've been working on tech in the background. Um, but that's all I'm really going to talk about that. But initially, that's what we're planning to do. But the main focus is building this IP, right? So we're already working with, or in the works with, Manga Studio. And also a prolific writer. So what we have built out within the Discord so far has been primarily world building. We haven't set any title characters. We haven't had any plot lines necessarily. And this is something that we want someone who is experienced to be able to take the lead on this, because selling to a global market is very different than like fan fiction within like a Discord, for instance, right? And so we understand that our focus was really to build the world, and the storytelling really comes post mint. So we're working with a manga studio. So that is going to be in the works post mint as well. And then we're going to start basically continually having deliverables. Um, I'm not going to like hone in too much on that because we'll just leave that to surprise. But what we'll be also doing is like starting real world, like basically marketing, things like touring like anime conventions, um, just like more like basically in the Web 2 space, basically pushing the brand. In terms of like what the offerings look like, short term or like immediately, right? Um, so initially as a holder, um, so there will be a few things. So one, of course, like if you hold the NFT, you have the IP rights to be able to commercialize your character however you wish. And then if we choose to use your character in any like promotional mediums, or if it becomes a main character, etc., like we would have to reach out to you first, in regards to like how we plan out that contract. Um, but aside from that, something we're going to have to immediate access is going to be a community generated fund. And this isn't just like a fund where it's just like this amount of cash and we're just going to give it out to like whoever applies, etc. It's more of like or a way of empowerment, and especially in the creative space. So the way we see this community fund being utilized is that, of course, there'll be an application process. It's not just for like Web3 projects. It's like it's for anything, in the creative space, that you're very passionate about, passion projects. And what we're going to be doing is going to be helping basically have like deadlines and like guide you through the process to reach your like final deliverable, basically, right? So that's something I think that I don't know, I'm sure like it's done before elsewhere, but that's something that's like special to us, and like how we can help like build our community and help empower them to pursue their passions. So that's another thing. We're also going to have utility tokens passively generated from simply holding the NFT. They'll be utilized in more ways that we're going to talk about later on. Um, and that's also events. So access to events. We should be having an event coming up very shortly after Mint as well. Yeah, so I guess hopefully that answered some of your questions.
Yeah, I think I more than answered some of the questions. I think I wanted to get back to. By the way, I love that. I love the idea of using funds to help fund other people's passions too. A part of this, I think it's a great way to build community and a great way to show that you guys are invested and not just creating a cool project to one day just move off of, but that you're invested in actual people. So I love to hear that. One thing I really wanted to know a little bit more about was the story in the world in which Shikigai kind of lives in. I kind of skipped over that in the beginning, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the way the story was designed is really based off of our inspiration as artists. So I talk about this in every AMA, that like all of us come from like an art background, besides like what we do for a day job, and I think, like growing up as a creative, like for all of us, we felt like really confined to societal constructs, like it felt like a predetermined path to a professional career. So like high school, college, professional degree, career, right? And this model really alienated against like the rebels, the outliers, the ones who kind of wanted to break away from this. And there were always gatekeepers at the helm, deciding whether or not creative expression was really valuable enough to be seen, or valued. So this is what our story is really based around, like this journey of finding your own identity through breaking away from these constructs. So the world Shikigai basically is a new world built by the zeros, who are like basically kind of like um, the main group of people that or I don't know how to explain this. Um, I guess without revealing too much, they're the main group of people at the foundation of this world, right? And they basically set the design for the world. And they made it for a group of people, which is the general population, called the ones. Okay, so zeros and ones. Um, what is instilled in this world is that there are laws called axioms, and these axioms dictate like basically where you live, what job you are going to be doing once you hit 18, etc. And this is based off of like data they took from when you were 0 to 18 years old. So that, like for us, like that's kind of like a parallel to like real life, where it's like 0 18 is like kind of like having like these external experiences dictate kind of like where you kind of end up, um, and then you go to college and you kind of like are on this like predetermined path, basically, and yeah, so that's like kind of like how the story starts off, or like the world kind of starts off. And the idea is like having these protagonists figure out what's going on with this world and why it's not really a utopia as it seems, and figuring out an individual's identity and really breaking away from these axioms.
I love that, and it feels like that might be a kind of a parallel to kind of how some people see our world, right?
Yep.
The Earth, so to speak. That's awesome. I love that that kind of story. And does that play into what Shikigai means, like the actual origin of the word?
Yeah, so she meaning death and ikigai meaning reason to be. The way we saw it, like so shikigai itself is not a real word, it's kind of like a fusion of concepts. So with those two meanings, the way we saw it is that it's the death of monotony or conformity, in order to find your true identity, right? And this monotony conformity for us is this linear path, right? Like basically breaking away from that, to find yourself. Um, and then another meaning for shikigai, shiki, and gai, so like the equation to worth, right? What is the equation to worth, And this is a question that is like a prominent theme within our world.
Very, very, very cool. One thing you mentioned is certain certain jobs, um, certain districts have certain jobs and things like that. How does that play into the PFP side of things? Is that purely cosmetic, or is there some kind of mechanic that you guys hope to implement later on, where those kinds of like jobs kind of come into play, or is that something that's going to be told through the story?
So, like, the way we want the PFPs to be experienced is that this is a world, right? And in a world, like, based on the district you live in, you have like your own jobs in those like districts, right? So they play into the lore in terms of like how it plays out, like more so later on. That's yet to be announced or talked about. But it definitely won't have to do with anything related to the PFPs itself, where it's like if you change a job, like you change like the avatar or something like that. So that will not be in play, but there will be other things that we're going to be doing with the PFPs later on, but not the job side from the job point of view.
Excellent. And one thing you mentioned earlier is like tech. Can you give us a little bit of background? I see on the website, the white paper, it looks like you guys are utilizing ERC 721A. Can you give us a little bit more of why you guys chose that, and how you're hoping that kind of helps with like minting costs and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I am not the lead dev. That's my co-founder Qubit, but I can speak on his behalf a bit. So we're using 721A as like the foundation, right? Um, because like yeah, of course, like I think like what the standard has been, the 721A really pushed the boundaries on that. What we're going to be exploring, or what Qubit is already exploring, is like how can we optimize in other ways, that not just like from the gas point of view, but like for instance like secondary gas aspects like that. And these are things that we have not talked about yet publicly. We haven't revealed our contract or anything yet, of course. So that is, but our idea is that like like we want to see how we can push the boundaries of what has been done, right? To see how we can help push the space forward. And whether that is something, so it's a lot of going to be a lot of trial and error on our end, and then having like auditors look over and make sure it's ready to go. But our goal is to innovate. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Awesome. I appreciate you giving us some details there. Um, so that's kind of all the questions that I had specifically here geared up for you. Wanted to just give you guys, some time to maybe answer some, or not answer, well, answer some questions, but kind of give us kind of like a one thing that you guys really want everyone from this space to kind of walk away with, understanding what Shikigai is, and talk a little there, and then we'll go into some questions. So for both of you, if you could just kind of speak to one thing, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Yeah. So I think like I would say like starting today now, I want to try to communicate more so of like beyond the IP, you know, so who we are beyond the IP. So I think what we've done a good job so far is really focusing on building out like the brand focused on story and culture, right? But you know, like based off of like our motivations, especially as artists, I think a lot of what drives us, you know, is to be an agent of change in this space, you know, and really build an ecosystem for creators and creatives, right? Um, what a lot of artists in the Web2 space, like access to funding, discoverability, and accessibility, are things that are lacking, you know. And this is something we hope to be able to remedy. And this involves like talking about like the tech that later on we will introduce. But overall, you know, like we're a Web3 company that's emphasizing like the intersection between story, kinship, and growth with tech to really allow creatives to remodel passions into careers, you know? And this is basically whether it's through story, right? Inspiration through story, or whether it's through actual physical tech. Um, this is pretty much who we are, you know? So it will take time to be able to develop, but this is our mission, you know? Yeah.
Awesome. Open Fridge, do you want to speak to that too? Some last words or last, I don't know, takeaways?
Yeah. So basically, I'm with Shikigai since the start. Um, I'm particularly particularly bullish on the team in terms of the execution of the Discord. I mean, I'm not sure if you have went through the Discord in Shikigai. Basically, Qubit develops like a bot that can rotate our districts from on a daily basis, so that even though we have three districts, Saburo, Ichiro, and Zero, they're able to interact and at the same time form a bond within their own districts as well. Yeah, and also we practice something called the shutdown. I mean, we close our Discord on Sundays so that um we give the community a day off instead of like grinding blindlessly, right? Yeah, so that's more of like the activities within the Discord and everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. That was one thing when I was on the Discord. I noticed that like not even just like the Discord shut down for Sundays, but I think sometimes like depending on what district you're in, like the main chat is shut down for like a little bit too. Is that right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so on the weekends, like the main chat is completely shut down, and you just have a chat for people in your district.
yeah, I love that concept. So like it's kind of like building a community within a community is what it
Yeah,
feels.
basically.
Yeah. And Shikigai is like one of the projects that I see pre-min. It's community run, so I think it's fantastic that um we are able to empower our community members so that um yeah, they can run the community on their own.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you guys answering those questions. Let's go ahead and get to our first question here from Antonio. I'm going to bring him up as a speaker and we will get him his question. And just to be clear, this has been an issue in the past. I just want to make sure you're asking a question. Do not come up here to introduce your project or to ask for collaboration with the team or anything like that. Let's keep it to question about the project. As well as once you do ask the question, just for time's sake, I'll go ahead and I'll pull you off so there's no follow up or any kind of interruption there. So not to be not to rule with an iron fist, but it runs smoother that way. So I'll go ahead and bring Antonio on. And Antonio, you're connecting now, but once you're connected, you have the floor.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for having me up here. I just wanted to say, like, I am super hyped for the project. I love the art. I really love the vision of kind of connecting the Web3 space. And I just wanted to ask kind of a two-part question. One, Open Fridge was talking a little bit about how the three districts are connected. Um, I'd love if Irix can drill a little bit more on how the three districts and Furusato in the middle connects them. And also, I wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit more about how the tech is going to enable the culture and really push this product forward. Thank you so much for having me, and those are my
For
questions.
sure. Cool. All right. I'm gonna try to say not more than I need to, because those are both questions that relate to like more about the lore and then more about the tech. But in terms of the lore side, I don't know if you mean like how like the Discord itself like interacts with each other. So like I mean like generally we
No,
have like
I meant the world itself where the
okay,
characters are going to live in.
Yeah. So right now like sorry about that. So right now like we haven't like in world building, there are aspects of it that we're going to be like releasing more publicly on Twitter later. But through like the riddles, like people start to find out like basically how the world was pretty much built, right? So Ichiro was built first, then Jiro, then Saburo, and then just like there's like a map floating around. We haven't released it on Twitter yet, but from one of the riddles, we have a map of what the world looks like, how the different districts like basically coexist together, with Furusato being the center, the cherry blossom tree, and also through or riddles you find out that there's something special about cherry blossom trees in general, as they were basically people were basically harvesting it for energy, pre Shikigai, pre the building of Shikigai, right? And that Furusato is the last the last cherry blossom tree that exists, and it's basically at the center of this new world. So, and when I say world, um, it's not like Earth in terms of world. It's just that the people who live within Shikigai just know of Shikigai, and that's the world to them. And how I don't know how else to explain like in terms of like how the district interrelates. They coexist with each other. So it's as if like if you live in like say Chicago or like New York, wherever, like there are different like you have like downtown, you have like Upper East Side, like you have like different like parts that reflect the same world, but they have different characteristics. However, for our world, it's way more drastic. Like Ichiro is a completely different vibe from Saburo, for instance, right? Even though they are like literally right next to each other, neighboring. So that all plays back into the lore and everything. Cool. So there's that, and then in terms of like the tech, so I will talk less about the solution, more so about the problem that we see. And the problem that we see that we want to solve through technology is two pronged. One is from the Web 2 side with creatives, right? There's lack of discoverability, accessibility to resources, and funding. On the Web3 side, right, there's too much friction for creatives to create. You have Twitter, you have Discord, you have Telegram, you have Patreon, right? For an artist to be able to exist in this space, in a Web3 centric space, there aren't many Web3 native tools or platforms, etc., that really cater to this right now, right? And these are things that we are seeking to solve with our technology, right? So you can take that however you want.
I think he dropped off as a speaker.
Oh.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think that was the great answer. Yeah, sorry. we'll go ahead and move on to the next person that's requesting to ask a question. Bring them on now. And it's connected. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead and ask your question.
So my question is regarding the traits. I would like to know if there is already like a set number of legendaries or one-of-ones, and if some traits are specifics for like districts. Like it was mentioned that there are 3 districts and one interconnects them all. So are there like specific traits that distinguish each NFT? Like I can see by the traits of this specific character if he's from the X or Y district. And in terms of, sorry, that's all already a second question, but I would like to know if in terms of world building and the lore, will some of the collection one-of-ones will be part of that in the manga creation and the story and all of that? That's my question. Thank you.
Yep, for sure. So first off, there will not be one of ones per se, um, in the sense where it's like this is like this is so different from everything else. Basically, the way we kind of see like rarity, like there will be rarity, and it's kind of like tier based, right? So I guess the one of ones are not going to be just one, but it's like a similar, I guess, similar unique design that envelops a bunch of them. Or not a bunch, I guess, like maybe like 200 to 300 of the whole collection, right? So the way we see rarity, you know, like we're not trying to have like, okay, these are your like 50 to 100 one of ones, and these are like the absolute legendary, you know. Um, we see it more as like different basically tiers of rarity, um, and that's how we're treating it. And everything we've released so far in terms of the art, like these are not rare. I would say these are not like rare ones, I guess. They just range from common to uncommon. um, Maybe like there are traits that are a little bit more rare, but in general we haven't really showed what a rarer um, design looks like. So that's that question. Um, in terms of, oh, and you can think of like overlapping between traits in the sense like this. So we have 3 collections basically, right? And it's just imagine it's like 3 completely different collections where they don't really coexist. But if you see a trait, like say you have like Jiro has the mask, right? Like this super teched out mask in Jiro. If you see it in Saburo, then there's something that has been done to the mask. Like it might look a little bit more run down. It might look like there's like graffiti on it, you know? Like it's going to fit if there are overlap of traits, it's going to fit um a different district and like what is significant to them, you know? So you won't necessarily have like a trait that is like meant to be like like a clothing design for like Jiro, and have that same exact clothing design elsewhere, right? Um, so yeah, that's how we see traits. Um, your second question was about world building. What was the second question, Isekai?
I was asking if some of the NFTs will they be part of the story, like the main story, the main lore, or in the main lore, it's keeping it more general, so to be more um, inclusive to all NFT holders.
So the so you're asking if there are characters in the collection that appear in the story?
Yeah, exactly.
No. Um, there might be similarities, but basically, um, the the characters that are going to be in the story, like the title characters, will not exist within our collection. Like what we're building in this collection is basically everyone else that lives in the city.
Truly
Okay, thank you.
understood. All right. Well, thank you for that question and answer. we'll bring on Amir for the next question.
Shikigai, what's your Discord name? This is like the second or third time I've seen you up here.
It's d.isekai #2118.
Are you into this? I haven't seen you, but I know you're in these spaces. I'm gonna give you an identity pass.
Thank you.
Unless you already have it. Just join Discord if you're not already in it, and just open a ticket and tag me because I can't find you. All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Amir is connecting now. I'll go ahead and remove Shikigai as a speaker. Looks like he's connecting. Not sure how long that takes. Oh, and he's gone. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. You can even ask me if you want. I mean, I'm sure these guys wouldn't appreciate that, but
Yeah, feel free to ask us any questions, man.
well, if that's no more questions. Again, Antonio's got another question here. You have the floor, sir.
Hey guys, sorry, since nobody's asking questions, I'm just really curious about the world, and I'd love to hear more if you guys can share about any plans for these characters to live somehow in the metaverse, or are we just creating our own world? But I'd just love to hear if there's any plans for these characters and this collection to interact with any of these metaverses that are being created.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like there are definitely groups who have reached out to us for inclusion of like our IP within their metaverse, etc. Stuff like that. These are things that's still under consideration. We really want to aim to focus on building out our own IP first before we like diversify and like go like basically in other places without a strong foundation first, right? So I mean, it's definitely like this is the idea of building an IP and an identity for ourselves, right? So that like when we are in a different metaverse or something, right, it'll be like who it is, right? So we're working on that. Definitely something that we're not opposed to.
Awesome. Thank you. And my last question, besides kind of like this space that's being created for the Web3 community to connect and help people who are interested in make a living in this space, do you foresee like any other ways that the collection is going to provide utility for holders?
Yeah, but like the word utility, like do you mean like a vacuum cleaner where you pick it up and put it down?
No,
Or
I mean like just besides like the beautiful art and the world that's being created, like what value are holders gonna receive for owning a piece?
yeah, what we're aiming to do is like try to tackle it from multiple like pain points or like pressure points, I guess, because like we understand that like one utility is not something that someone else may like, right? Like this like community fund, like that's like one out of like a few things we're doing. But in terms of like, well, let me just address like we're not creating a tool right now that you are going to be able to like analyze the market or anything, like nothing like pick up put down like that, right? But like for sure, like for instance like access to events, right? Like that is utility that we see, passive generation of tokens that can be redeemed within like our own ecosystem, right? Obviously like collaborations in terms of future like allow list spots, having governance over the community, right? Being a holder, creating and building your community, right? And working alongside with us, right? Having the behind the scenes and the knowledge early on about like what we're building, the transparency and basically us being on the ground running with the rest of the community. also like just the IP itself, as us as a IP as a brand generates value, right? The value shouldn't come back to like me, for instance, right? It should come back to the community itself, right? And this is something that may not necessarily happen right away, but the idea is that like, yeah, as we grow value, everyone grows value, right? Um, and these are things that, like, for instance, like later on, if we do something, I mean, we are planning to do something, but like, I'm just gonna say like the word airdrop, but if there are things that are airdropped in the future, right, that itself is like a utility, to be able to access other things, but or be able to have value in a different way, right? So I mean, we're trying to tackle this in multiple different ways. Mentorship and coaching. That's something we're going to be installing. I forgot to talk about that, and then like more education, right? Like weekly or bi-weekly, like kind of like sessions and access to like coaching and things like that. That's redeemable by like passive token generation. Um, Man, like there are a lot of things that we're aiming to do, but we're gonna focus on like a few things at a time and see like, like what, because like ultimately like the way we see utility for holders is like how can we continue to iterate and adapt, like a lot of some of the ideas that we're trying to plan out for utility may not like really work and may not be something that like everyone is like interested in. So like based on like how the community evolves, right, we will just adapt accordingly, and try to find ways to continue to provide value in the holders.
Thank you. I love that answer. That really kind of gets to what I hope to hear. So I really appreciate that.
For sure.
And yeah, and the last thing, you mentioned a lot about how to leverage the IP. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, are there any plans to maybe make an anime series or a manga, or tied in merch? Like, do you have any plans for things like that?
Like to build an IP takes time, right? So like even if we sell out, like we don't have a brand or anything yet. And when I say IP, I just mean like brand. Because I know IP can be used for other things as well. But yeah, like we're not branded yet, like even in the Web3 space, and especially in the Web2 space, and our goal is to be a global entity, right? And this will take time, and being able to get to that point requires, one requires our story, right, which is our primary driver, but ways to communicate this story, right? Ways to communicate our narrative, our values, and to find people that fit that niche and join our community, right? And this is going to be a progress. So like you said, visual development, like yes, manga, possibly animation, possibly a visual novel game, right? We're already in the works with a manga studio. So manga studio being like a team of in like I guess not licensed. I don't know what the word is, but they're international manga artists, and they have a studio, and this is what they do for a living. And working with them to see like what this could look like. And this is like all like kind of like we're in like the planning process right now. But even when we start like building out chapters and stuff like that, like until it's ready, it won't be publicly released, right? So, and I think that's another thing, like the prospect of manga and whatnot is like interesting, but we wouldn't release anything less than say a whole volume. We might do teasers every now and then, and like communicate with our holders, but until we're ready to release like a volume and like really push it out and globally distribute it, right? Then we aren't really going to be like promoting it like, oh, we're going to be making a manga, like if you look like we've been doing this for a while now, but you will not find it anywhere on our Twitter or anything. You're only going to hear it from me. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the answer.
Yeah.
That was super complete. I really appreciate it, and I'm very hyped for the project. I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm gonna step off and leave the rest of the floor to other people who may have questions. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. All right, next question comes from Hate It by Fate. I'm gonna add him on, and then we got a question from Julie right after.
What's up? Oh, Hayden's still connecting.
Yeah, just give it a second. No, I love the concept of you guys being realistic in a lot of ways, where everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna build this game out, we're gonna do this cartoon, we got this movie, we know this and this and this, and it's realistic, saying, hey, like one step at a time. I really do appreciate that, and I feel like it kind of gives me some confidence that you guys aren't trying to get in way over your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that like we can have like all these visions or like dreams and stuff, But at the end of the day, we're still a team of 11, and everything we've been doing is in house, right? So I think like the first step is really to scale out the team and see what is manageable and what is the process, like to be able to fulfill the same like values and the same like goals we had, but based off of what we have in front of us.
Hey, sorry, my bad. I think I got rogue the first time. Can everybody hear me
No,
now?
it's all good.
Hey, it's
Yeah,
Fate. How are you doing, Eric?
good. Yeah,
Yeah, I just I love that y'all have the mental health, kind of shut down on Sundays. I've kind of been taking care of my own mental health, so I had to take a little bit of a break from for like 2 weeks since I got my
yeah,
IP. But I actually had a question regarding um kind of the plan for that Web 2 marketing first that I've heard in like the initial spaces. So
yep,
regarding that, because like you said earlier, people don't know about the brand necessarily. This is going to
yep.
come out as kind of a new manga, new anime, new brand for Web 2. So I guess if you can answer this, um, what is kind of the plan to let people from Web 2 know about the Web 3 component, and how is the brand gonna
Mm,
onboard the Web 2
yep,
people and go through that process and say, hey, we're actually not just an anime and a manga or a brand, but we're actually a lot more than that, and there's this whole other basically universe that exists that they may not know about.
yeah. So the way we see it is that like when we advertise, like so we're talking about the onboarding process specifically. So when we're planning to onboard Web 2 to Web 3, we don't think about it like, oh, like basically join the NFT space or like you need an NFT to get in and stuff. Like the idea is to advertise what a Web 3 community looks like, and what you can do with a Web 3 community. Because I think that's something like talked a lot about. But like I think that's something that people don't necessarily understand from the Web 2 side, right? And I think a good example of this is like growing up by watching anime, and then like you go on like these forums or like Reddit or whatever, like just to talk about episodes, talk about lore, to like basically building a fandom, right? And that creates a community for the anime or the manga or whatever, right? But the interesting aspect is like how that experience would be different with us, right? Because we would help facilitate that within the Web 3 space, right? So there it wouldn't be like gated by like, oh, you have to have an NFT to be a part of this community, like there will be basically kind of like levels, like all access versus um like uh like if you're a Genesis holder, and being able to contribute and build from the ground, like imagine like for, and this is not for everyone, like say like Dragon Ball Z, right? Being able to want to do more, like want to know more about like the process, or like being able to have your input in certain things, right? Or etc., and I think things like this is something that is not seen in Web 2, like being able to be part of the building process of a bigger IP, right? Obviously we have to build the IP to reach a point where it's desirable, right, where that demand is there. But then once we hit that aspect, the idea is that we'll bring people into the space to experience community, and that a community that is Web3 spirited, you know? And I think this in itself will help a lot of the psychological barriers that people have when adopting the Web3 space, you know? Especially with like media, etc., like talking about like NFTs and like energy waste and like stuff like this, right? Like this kind of like puts a different perspective on it. Um, and then also like through the community, like obviously we can educate, you know, like everyone in the space generally is already in the bigger Web3 community. So being able to onboard people who are willing to adopt it is much easier than onboarding like people who are not really sure, you know. I don't know if you know, but you probably know, but I'm also a doctor, and I know, you know, like when someone's like trying to quit smoking, right? You know, when they don't want to quit smoking, like they like it doesn't matter what you say, like they're not going to, you know, like they can try for like a week or two, but they're already convinced in their head that they're not going to. So the idea is to be able to have them be on the same team, and you're just helping facilitate. So that's kind of like the same idea. Like psychologically, we want to be able to onboard people who are already on the same team, right? We're not trying to force anyone to be like, oh, you must join us in order to experience like the rest of the manga or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, I think that makes 100% sense, and I think it's like genius that like you're kind of pushing a brand, but behind a Web3 identity. I mean, not necessarily Web3 identity, but saying like there's this brand and there's already this community built around it, and I think that's a really like special. And I don't think there's any kind of um, media primarily that's like animated in this style that's out there like that. So I really like that. So thanks a lot.
Sure.
I'll step down.
Thank you.
Appreciate the question. Thank you. And now we will bring on Julie. Julie, when you're connected, just go ahead and let us know by asking your question.
Hi. I was just curious if you guys see yourself releasing like a roadmap at some point of kind of where you're headed, or if that you see that as kind of part of the entry of the brand, trying to, you know, kind of follow what's going to be happening next. And kind of, I know that the community is really central to the project, and I was curious kind of how the community might shape that.
Did you say roadmap? I missed that word.
Yeah, a roadmap or
Yeah,
something that
for
shows
sure.
kind of where it's headed.
Yeah. So we are going to be releasing something, but the problem with like a linear roadmap is that like expectations become like, oh, we are on this linear roadmap, you know. Whereas like, and this to your second point, with like having a community kind of build with us, you know, like this roadmap can iterate, right? And a lot of times on a roadmap, it's like, oh, like by this date, like we promise this. We do have, I mean, we have timelines, and we have like everything like planned out, like this month do this month do this, you know. But we have like multiple iterations of it. So in terms of what we plan to release is going to be less so of like a linear roadmap, is in like unless we're like 100% for sure that this is going to be like what we're going to be doing, we probably won't have it on a linear roadmap. But we are going to be releasing like, I guess, like things that we are working on, you know. Like we call it like a flow map, you know. Because the idea is that like we're able to flow based on where like the currents and the tides like take us, you know. And not necessarily be restricted to any one direction. And because like, you know, like things may come up, you know, like we may not get enough funding, or we may not be able to work with this group or like this, you know. But does that like really diminish the overall vision and what we're aiming to do? No, it doesn't. It just, you know, we just got to iterate with the community of where to go. So in terms of like how the community will be able to have direction, I think it's communication, you know. Like right now we don't have NFTs or anything, but we're already having the community kind of like dictate the direction of how, say, the Discord is, you know. Like this is a microcosm of like a lot of things that we're doing, but like being able to dictate like events, like for instance, like there was someone who and this is like the cool part about it, there's this event going on called Make the World a Better Place. And basically, people just like post photos and then just like a blurb about like what they did like for that week or whatever, that they felt like made the world a better place. I didn't even know this event was going to happen. It was someone like not someone with like any like roles or anything. It was just someone proposed it, and then a sage basically co-signed it, and then now we have this like week-long event where people can like get an identity pass, a whitelist for participating in this event, through a raffle, and it's like things like this, that's built from the community and not necessarily from me, right? Or like the rest of the team, so we really try to approach it from a bottom up aspect instead of like a top down. And I think this is what's going to dictate like our future as well, because like, yeah, we have like ideas and we have like a roadmap and we have a pitch deck, like everything is like we have a lot of plans, but that's us building from the top down. So we really want to try to flip that narrative and see how we can incorporate more of the community, not necessarily through like a DAO type of, I mean, it'll be similar to a DAO, but we're trying to kind of like see how we can make that unique to us, like for instance, like sages, which are from the community, we don't have any moderators. Sages, for most collaborations, like we put it up to a vote, and there are times where like it seemed like from our end, it seemed like collaboration was a shoe in, it's like, oh yeah, for sure we're gonna do this, but then or sages felt differently, and then we had to have a conversation and like just like hear people out, as to like why not and stuff, and then make a new decision based off of like this like insight, so. And I think this is like important for us, like trying to figure out different ways to be able to do this. Right now, like pre-mint, we're basically just testing out different options, right? Post-mint, there will be more solidified like structure in terms of like how holders can be able to directly or indirectly influence things.
Yeah, that's great. I must say too, I really liked the make the world a better place event. It was a really wonderful organic thing that grew out of everything. So that was really great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, whoa, like this is a really good idea. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you so much for the question, Julie. And we'll go ahead and call that a wrap. I want to go quickly announce we have 3 whitelist winners from this space that we're going to go ahead and announce. We just randomly selected. Excuse me. We have Antonio, who asked our first question. He actually got selected, as well as Trey-tastic, at Trey-tastic, and at Mary Less. So if you guys are listening, you have been selected to be on the whitelist. So we have 3 whitelist spaces that we're giving out today for that. So thank you all so much for joining. Again, the team at Shikigai, this is the second time we've got to, have a discussion with you guys on your project, once in Twitter Spaces in our office, or sorry, once on this Twitter Space and then once in our office hours. I really can't wait to see what you guys do, and I'm really bullish on the world building you guys plan on doing. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's always an honor to be here with you guys. Yeah.
Same here.
Right. Well, everyone have a good night, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much.